Welcome to this program Top Shot, the program in which we are going to talk to Mr. Piot, the Executive Secretary of UNAIDS, the organization which is mandated by the UN family to deal with the AIDS problem of the world. So welcome to India, Mr. Piot. What brings you to India?
India is a country that I've been visiting every year, at least once, because not only because it's a great country, both a great nation, but also because the AIDS epidemic had taken off in very worrisome ways. But I come here to thank the people who are engaged in the fight against AIDS for a great job, because we have real results, and also because I want to continue to come and continue to learn from what's going on here.
So how do you think about AIDS problem in India? Because for some time it was feared that probably India will be next to South Africa in terms of having the epidemic reaching the people. But seems to have improved, or is it something the same situation? How is it now?
Well, there are 2.4 million people living with HIV in India. But the averages are pretty meaningless, because some states are far more affected than others, particularly in the south. Some populations are heavily infected with HIV. We have districts where 3, 4, 5% are HIV positive, like some districts in AP or in Karnataka. And then we have populations like in the northeast of people who inject drugs, sex workers, so on, truck drivers. But the situation has gotten better. We are seeing results, real results, in terms of less people becoming infected, particularly in the south. Tamil Nadu was the first state where we saw the efforts of prevention paying off. But now it's true all over the south, the southern states. And secondly, there are now about 155,000 Indians on antiretroviral therapy. Oh. It's a treatment that can save your life.
Oh, really?
And that comes from basically nothing a few years ago. So there's real progress, and I think that NACO is doing a great job. But it's not over yet.
Yeah.
And it's an epidemic that is still very dynamic. It is searching its way. We see, for example, that now in some of the northwest, we're also people injecting drugs, and HIV is spreading there. We see also epidemics of men who have sex with men. We see also that prevention programs in the northern states are not yet having their effect. So it's a mixed picture, but the glass is half full, not half empty.
But how do you account for the decline in a particular state of Tamil Nadu, but not all over the country? Is it because of the health delivery system in Tamil Nadu, or the civil society in Tamil Nadu, or the government action in Tamil Nadu? What is really responsible for that?
Well, it's not just one thing that makes a success in the fight against AIDS. First of all, there's always leadership. That's why it's so important that we have in India a very unique situation where we have a platform of members of parliament, Lok Sabha and so on, and of the legislative, taking this on across party. AIDS is not a party issue. Yeah. AIDS is something that is an issue for the nation, for the people.
It's a humanitarian problem.
A humanitarian problem, and I think that you and your colleagues have really shown leadership. And but that leadership is different from one state to another. That's one thing. Secondly, like states like Tamil Nadu, AP, Karnataka, they've started quite early in their efforts. And they've involved also the communities that are affected. People living with HIV are part of the solution. And so it's the long-standing efforts. And then let's not forget that the National AIDS Control Organization was founded many years ago. And in AIDS, we can't have results like in a few months' time.
Yeah.
It's the quarterly result doesn't work.
It's a long run.
Long run. It's a marathon more than a sprint.
Yeah.
But we have to run the marathon at the speed of a sprint. So that is the problem. Yeah. And we should never give up, because when we decrease attention, then we know that the number of new infections will go up again. We saw that in a country like Thailand, for example, highly successful in the 90s, the fight against AIDS. But now new infections are coming up because there's less activity.
So there is no room for complacency. If you have achieved some success, that should only be taken as more efforts required now. And it's a reminder that you do little, achieve little results, but you have to accomplish much more. That's the message you like to give it to?
Absolutely. Complacency actually kills people, in the sense that if we are complacent, we decrease our efforts, we will see more people becoming infected. And so in AIDS, one thing we've learned is that act now or pay later.
Yeah.
Why is that so? If we act now, we can prevent people from becoming infected. That's the best thing that we can have. And those who are infected will need quite expensive and complicated treatment maybe in 10 years' time. And in the meantime, may infect some others. And so that's why it's so important to act now.
Yeah. Tell me, typically, is it now true that AIDS is the most dreaded disease in the world? Because there are so many killer diseases. There was a plague, we fought it. There was TB, we got over
Right.
it. Now we have got hypertension, diabetes, and disease one after another, cardiological diseases. Is this something you can say now among the diseases? This is the biggest killer disease in the world?
Depends where you are. AIDS didn't even exist 25, 27 years ago. We hadn't heard of it.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, it's the first cause of death in Africa. In Africa, no doubt, it's by far the #1 killer. In Asia, it's different. In Asia, and in the rest of the world, it's like among the top 10. It's like number 6, number 7. But when you look at specific age groups, like, for example, between 25 and 34 years, about 10% of all deaths in India are caused by AIDS.
Oh.
For that age group. But it's an age group you normally don't die.
In that age group, are women more or the male more?
Male more. In India, male more.
Okay.
Yes. Men more, because men tend to use drugs more, go to sex workers, or have sex with each other. So these are all things that make that there are more men. But it is also, when you look at tuberculosis, a disease that has been in existence forever.
Yeah.
That is now on the increase because somebody who has HIV infection, the immune system goes down, so you become more susceptible to tuberculosis. And so there is a tuberculosis epidemic that is following the AIDS epidemic as its shadow. So AIDS is more than about AIDS.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so important to control it now, because no country is safe from AIDS if not all countries in the world have resolved it. It's like cleaning the air above your garden or your city.
Yeah.
If your neighbor is not doing the same, the wind will blow to your
So
side.
this needs global effort but local action, and this is something
Yes.
which we will need to do. As you are saying that probably a person may die of any disease, but a cause may be HIV/AIDS because that actually finishes your immune system, and then it makes it very susceptible, very
That's
vulnerable
right.
to
Yeah.
any disease to come and catch it.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
basically HIV/AIDS is also, dealing with HIV/AIDS, they are actually trying to prevent many more diseases to inflict you.
Yes, particularly tuberculosis, that's for sure. And what we're seeing also in India, that the babies being born because they get a virus from their mother during birth, and these babies, they will die, or then we have orphans more and more, because for every adult who dies, there are children who are left behind. So it's quite a complex problem.
You know, one of the problems with many diseases is that, there is a disease but there is a solution possible. There is a cure possible because of some drug which is available. In case of HIV/AIDS, we have not been able to still find out a proper vaccine which can
Right.
cure it. Now, typically, the worry, particularly in the developing countries, is that because of the intellectual property rights that govern the new discovery and drug delivery system, new molecules to be discovered, it is not going to be possible, because probably once you discover it, people are going to say that now HIV/AIDS is a universal disease, a problem faced by the universe, so let it be given free. So is it something which is like a chicken and egg situation, that because of IPR, no drugs are delivered, and because of that, no solution is coming?
Well, first of all, I agree with you that AIDS is a problem with a solution. The fact that there are results, less people becoming infected, is there as demonstrating that, but also that we have treatment. That is only available since 1996, so it's fairly recently, but that has revolutionized how we saw. Before that, AIDS was 100% fatal. Now, intellectual property rights. Who produces the drugs? Who invents them? Big pharmaceutical companies. But let's not forget that it's Indian pharmaceutical companies that are now providing well over half of all antiretroviral drugs, these anti-AIDS drugs, in the world. And they're of good quality. And that was a big fight to get there, because in Doha in early 2000, there was an agreement at the World Trade Organization that was brokered so that in case of public health emergencies, a patent, intellectual property right, should not be in the way of saving lives.
So that is helping now.
And that is helping.
So we'll continue talking to you on this issue, and we'll just take a short break. Don't go away. We are talking about a big problem of AIDS that humanity is facing, and we are trying to find out whether India is safe or India needs to do something more. And we are talking to the chief of AIDS organization of the world. So don't go away. Come back. Suresh Prabhu waiting for you to come back. So welcome back. We are talking to the Executive Director of UNAIDS. So Peter, we are talking about your efforts to combat AIDS. So you talked about one of the cure. But in case of AIDS, the prevention is always better than cure. In fact, prevention is the best cure that one can think of rather than cure itself. So tell me, prevention has many ramifications. One of the best prevention will come in form of education. If you tell people how to have safe sex, that's best way to deal with that. And probably there are people in India who think that sex education is something which can actually prevent AIDS and also prevent many more things. So do you think sex education is something like a subject we should be introducing at an early age in the school?
Yeah, first of all, we don't have a vaccine against AIDS, and there's no vaccine in sight. We need more research. So the only vaccine we have is an education vaccine, is a social vaccine. And we need to start early. Young people are becoming sexually active every day as normal part of growing up, so that's not a problem. And so what we know is that sex education in schools, life skills education, it's not only sex, it's all relations and all the things you have to learn, that's really very important to start early, but each age, of course, in the appropriate way. You don't start with a full package in primary school. But
you know, in India it's a very sensitive issue because of cultural inhibitions that we are facing. There are people who think, how can you tell a child what sex means? So, you know, do you have a package of bringing this issue of education, which takes into consideration the sensibilities of the cultural traditions of various countries, rather than having one form of sex education? Teaching taught all over, like mathematics or say chemistry or geometry can be taught anywhere in the world in the same form. But can you customize this type of sex education modules in customizing it to the local situation?
No, definitely that's necessary. It has to be customized by culture, but also by age group. By a younger child, you don't tell the same things as somebody of 15 or 16 or 18. So it has to go gradually. What we know is that what's important is that it's been done by teachers who feel comfortable with it, who are also trained for this. It doesn't have to be the biology teacher, it can be the teacher of mathematics. Some teachers have more contact with kids than others.
One who has better communication skills.
Yes, better communication skills. But it's really necessary to do it, not only for AIDS, but also for safer pregnancies, for other sexually transmitted diseases and all that. So it's better that our children know than that they die of ignorance, because that's our responsibility as parents. And something very important I'd like to tell parents is that we have now very good proof that when children who have been informed through sex education that they don't have earlier sex, the contrary is true, that they don't have more sex partners. But when they have sex, they will protect themselves. So it is not that they suddenly will become like promiscuous or so, because we don't want to make things, to complicate things even more. So I think it should be part of normal curriculum or in schools, but in an appropriate way.
But tell me, in case of AIDS, when we talk about HIV/AIDS, what are the preventive measures would really help to actually take care of prevention of a disease?
Well, AIDS can only be, or HIV can only be transmitted in a few ways. One is through sex, from men to women, from women to men, and between men.
When you say sex, it's sexual intercourse.
Sexual intercourse, right. From mother to child during delivery. If you share needles and syringes, or you get a blood transfusion. That's it.
So only 3 ways it can be
Yes,
transmitted.
3 ways.
Okay. So let's take the first one. What's the prevention measures people should take? Because this is a program I'm sure is watched by millions of people who would like to know from you.
Well, you have 3 ways basically. One is if you have no sex, abstinence, that is safe. But like marriage
That's
was
good
not
for
made
spiritual people.
Yes,
Yeah.
and marriage was not made for abstinence, to say so. 2 is to make sure that you stick to one partner, or have the least partners, reduce your partners. And 3, to use a condom every time that you have sexual intercourse, and certainly when it's casual sex.
And then you talked about needles, how the needles affect.
Yeah, what happens is that if you inject yourself, or you use a needle and somebody has HIV infection, and you use the same needle and syringe to inject somebody else, either to inject illicit drugs, heroin or so, or for medical purposes, you bring blood from one person to the other directly in the vein. And that is the best
Again,
way.
the patient is very unsuspecting here because he would really not know whether it has been used. So it's a really responsibility of a medical profession to ensure that needles are used in a proper manner.
Exactly, but also drug users. We have drug users who shoot drugs intravenously.
That's it.
Heroin and so on. And there, because it's an illegal activity and so on, it's often done in group or
in a very clandestine way. So
and that's why we have these huge epidemics of HIV among injecting drug users.
And the third one, as you said, is going from mother to child, for which again, the best prevention is again having a safe sex. Well, so essentially you're talking about a safe sex, and you're talking about needles not being used in a proper manner. That's the best way to take care of it.
And then for mother to child, we have a drug that's being given at birth, at delivery, and that will prevent that the virus goes from the mother to the baby. So
there is something possible.
And that is a big program going on in India already.
Okay, so we'll talk about all these issues, and be very interesting that how to prevent it. That's the best way to do it, and we'll talk about it a little later after taking a short break. Don't go away. We are talking to UNAIDS chief about the problem of AIDS and whether India is safe from AIDS or we are still vulnerable. Don't go away. I'm waiting for you to come back. We'll continue talking to him. Welcome back. I'm talking to Peter, the chief of UNAIDS, about the problems of AIDS. So Peter, we are talking about various issues, prevention, cure, and stuff like that. Tell me, the real problem comes is now you are already infected, so you are a patient. The only certainty is death. Only possibility is how soon or how late. That's the only difference. The time from being declared as a HIV/AIDS patient till you die, that life is worse than the death, particularly because of the social stigma that is get attached to you. Many people would not like to talk to you. Many people would not like to employ you. Many people would say that I don't want to have any relation with you. So do you also have a program to deal with HIV-infected patients and their life before death, not life after death?
Yes. No, you're absolutely right. Sometimes society kills somebody living with HIV before the virus kills them. Because of the stigma, the discrimination, literally some people have been killed because of that. And yet, first of all, we now have treatment. Already 155,000 people in India are benefiting from treatment, so-called antiretroviral treatment, anti-AIDS treatment, thanks to the efforts of NACO. And it's not a cure. A cure would mean I can stop my treatment and I go back to before and the virus is out of my body. That doesn't exist. But as long as you take the drugs, you can function normally. In UNAIDS, we have people who are infected, but they take treatment and they work very hard. That's possible. But these drugs have side effects. They're heavy to take. It's still best not to become infected. But we can really save lives with these drugs. That's really the first thing.
There's a program to socially rehabilitate the HIV-infected.
Yes, we need to make
sure. It's working well?
Well, the stigma is still a big problem and discrimination, even in some hospitals. Some doctors may refuse to treat somebody with AIDS.
Tell me, in that case, when we talk about education, we need education pre-infection to prevent the disease from actually getting infected to the patient. But do you think we also need education for people to understand that HIV patient needs different type of treatment, not totally social ostracization? So do you think some education is required there again?
Definitely. Every good AIDS program has a component of dealing with overcoming the stigma, the discrimination. But it's also important. Why? Because people may be concerned, may fear that they get infected when we sit together, we talk, we eat together. It's nonsense. It's scientifically absolutely not possible even to do it. Because if that would be the case, just imagine half of India would be infected. Yeah. This is not, it's not mosquitoes,
just,
whatever.
Again, just I'm seeking a clarification. So are you trying to say that one HIV infected patient, unless he's having sex with somebody else, if you touch him, if you eat with him, there is nothing is going to happen to you?
No problem. You can touch, you can eat together, you sit on the same, in the
and you are living in the same house.
No problem whatsoever. This has been studied over and over again. And again,
if this can be said with confidence that there is no chance.
And just think of it, if that would be the case, there would be hundreds of millions of people infected. Right. It's not the case.
Absolutely. And in fact, it's going down rather than increasing.
It's going down.
So therefore, it shows that definitely there is no need for that. Tell me, one of the issues that always confront us is we are trying to deal with AIDS in a big way because it's a global issue. There's a lot of global attention on it. But the best way to use this as an opportunity, of course, every disease is not an opportunity, but I'm looking at it as an opportunity. Should we not use this as an opportunity to revamp the entire health delivery system of India, which will be the best insurance against the AIDS? Because that will mean that people who are infected can be treated. Those who are not, they could be educated. So can the health delivery system be revamped as a response to AIDS epidemic?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, every crisis has an opportunity. In the Chinese characters for crisis, even the second part means opportunity. And you know that it can be used to bring healthier lifestyles to young and older people in terms of sexual lifestyle, but others. Secondly, I mean, to strengthen the health system. For example, if we want to prevent mother-to-child transmission of the AIDS virus, of HIV, that requires that women go for antenatal care, that they deliver in a facility, in a healthcare facility. So that's one thing. But also the care for people with HIV is chronic care. So these things go together and is an opportunity. With the National Rural Health Mission, for example, HIV must be part of it. And I think that...
is it already made or not yet made?
It is a part of it, and I think it should be expanded now, because we now have to reach everybody who is infected, and so that we can save the lives with treatment. That's one aspect of healthcare strengthening.
Tell me, globally, which is the country which is most affected? Is it South Africa?
Well, it's in southern Africa. It's Swaziland, Botswana, smaller countries, and South Africa. South Africa alone is 5.5 million people with HIV for a population of maybe slightly over 40 million.
So more than 10%.
Is more than 10%. And they have also, every year there are about 500,000, 500,000 people who become infected. It's huge, and it's dominating everything in society there. But the good news is it's starting to come down, and that now in a country like Botswana, 90% or more of the people in need have access to treatment, so less people are dying.
So Southern Africa is the most infected?
Most infected.
Which is the second region like that?
It's East Africa, countries like Kenya, Ethiopia, and so on. And then we have the Caribbean on the other side of the ocean. Countries like Jamaica and so on. And
Central America.
Yes.
And what about Latin America, the Southern America?
Latin America is very concentrated in populations, in men who have sex with men, drug users and so on. They're so very concentrated, fairly low prevalence. But in Asia, it's Burma, Myanmar, that's the most affected, with Thailand. And we see a doubling of infections in countries like Vietnam and in China. So it's spreading all over. And
it's a global issue.
AIDS is not over anywhere in the world.
That's right. Tell me, you were saying earlier, and which was a very interesting point, that unless we get rid of HIV/AIDS from all over the world, unless we are sure that not even a single patient with HIV/AIDS survive on this world, I'm saying survive means not others are dead, but when we make sure that nobody is infected, till this problem will not be solved, because somebody else could be infected because of that person and it can again spread. So that means a global problem. Exactly. Now, we need global resources for this, and UN has taken initiative. Tell me, because of this crumbling economy, of the world, and then less and less resources will be available by the world community to give it to the others because they have so many domestic problems. US may think I have a problem, Japan may think I have a problem, Europeans may think we have to bail our banks out. So you think it will affect the AIDS program generally?
Yeah, AIDS is a global problem which requires a global solution. That's why international solidarity, to use that old-fashioned word, but, is very important. And I'm very concerned that the financial and economic crisis will have an impact on all social programs, on international assistance, that's for sure. But in the case of AIDS, first of all, we can say it's an excellent return on the investment, to use this economic language now, because we do have results from our efforts. That cannot always be said for development efforts in every country, including in India. Two, we know that in AIDS, it's act now or pay later.
Yeah.
And why am I saying that? If we don't prevent infections, if people become more and more infected, they will become ill later on. They will die, they will have very expensive cost to society and for their treatment. So we cannot interrupt the work that is going on now. And that is a message that's going to be very important, because if AIDS is not brought under control, many other sectors will suffer.
So the international aid for development is going to be affected, and the international aid for AIDS also going to be affected. But aid should be, probably can be deferred, but AIDS should not be deferred. That's the message you like to give to the global
community. None of the aid should be deferred.
And I hope really global community is listening to what you're saying, and I hope they continue to support us. But thank you very much for joining in this program, and I hope a very good career to you after you relinquish this responsibility. But I'm sure you'll continue to work on the AIDS program in some other capacity. So thank you very much for joining in this. This was Peter who were talking to us about a problem of AIDS patient in the world and how India should respond to it, what India has done and what India needs to do more. AIDS is a problem that is your problem, my problem, everybody's problem, and we all need to work on it. So thank you very much for joining in this program.